Well, good morning, everybody. Joe Brameyer here with the Less Than Yesterday podcast. I have the honor of introducing my guest this morning, local legend, proprietor, and there's a whole lot more titles that'll go along with that. But right now we have our good friend Fred Grunder in the shop this morning, bright and early at 6 a.m. on a Thanksgiving Eve. So that's exciting.
Exciting day.
Before we dive into the meat and potatoes, no pun intended here, but I was thinking about this morning on the way in. Whatever happened to that purple Corvette you had? You had a purple, right? Was it a Corvette?
Well, I've had several Corvettes.
Okay.
Of varying colors. But the latest was a dark red. We turned it into purple after we retired it. And as I've grown older, getting in and out of small cars is not as easy as it used to be. It's fun to drive. It's just not fun to get in and out of.
Sure.
I gave it to my grandson.
You did?
Yes.
So it's still on the road?
Not right at the moment. It had a few little issues. The motor's out of it right now. We're rebuilding the motor for it, and hopefully by spring it'll be back on the road.
Have you always been the Corvette guy? Or just a car guy in general?
Yeah, well, car guy in general. My first Corvette I bought in 1994, and except for a few years, I've always had one.
Yeah.
I had a couple, I'm sorry, not 94, 74. I had a couple 74s, a 76, I had an 80, I had a couple 70s, and then the 91's the latest.
What's the one that got away? What's the one you wish you still had that you're like, I should have never got rid of that one?
I had a 70. I had a 70 with 350 horse, 4-speed, air conditioning, the whole thing, and I wish I still had that.
Yeah.
In the Corvette family. I also had a 67 Chevelle Super Sport SS 396.
Okay, and for the non-car people out there, that's like a really badass car.
Yeah.
That's a really cool one.
That's a six-figure car nowadays. Nowadays, a really good one, a nice one.
Whatever happened to that?
Oh, well, we raced it for a while, drag racing, and I decided I wanted a Corvette and sold it and used that money and bought a Corvette.
Oh, that's fun. Well, many more Corvettes coming your way, hopefully someday.
No more.
You got to buy a Corvette motor here, it sounds like, for the purple passion.
Well, the grandson has a better job than I do, but it's kind of looking like Grandpa's going to pay for most of it.
Yeah, you might as well. You can't take it with you, right?
Yeah, I got there ain't going to be. I'm getting a small coffin.
Might as well let him squeeze every last blood out of the turnip, right?
Yeah, and they're managing. I had no idea what things cost. I haven't done anything like that lately, and it's just everything's so expensive, and I mean, it's just grown to that.
Yeah.
So
the hobby part of it is turned into, it can't just be a hobby anymore. It's anything you do with a car anymore seems to be a major investment.
Yeah, I mean, you go down and buy a new pickup, just a plain simple pickup truck, and you drop $50,000 pretty easy, or more. I haven't bought one for a couple of years, so I've got no idea there either. But I know the last one was the only option I bought on the truck was a built-in trailer brake switch, and it was $52,000 for a
bone stock
pickup truck.
Your latest venture is the Axe and Oak, which has been quite a process from the word go. I can remember touring the shell of the building with you. I was with Dad. This was years ago.
Yeah.
And you were talking about some of the historical significance of that building, some of the structural things that were within that building that you wanted to maintain. When did the idea of the Axe and Oak come to you? And maybe it didn't even come to you. Like, how did it get started? And from there to where it is today, and how long of a process was that?
Well, it actually started probably 50 years ago. I'm dating myself. I meant 30 years ago.
Okay. Well, all right. So either way, 30, 50, a long time ago.
Time ago. One of our old residents, not around anymore, Harry Griffith,
Okay.
had a building 2 doors down from me. For some of you who've been around, it used to be it ended up was a video store. You could rent videotapes there.
Oh, the old D&G video.
Yeah, the old D&G video. That was my building. And when I originally bought it, my idea was I always wanted to have a bar and restaurant. And we had actually started some of the construction inside that, and it just never went anywhere. And then in 1994, I bought the old hardware store,
Which is where the Axe and Oak is now.
Now, it used to be Quality Hardware, and for years, and towards the end, it was a Hepker Auto Supply for a few years in the 80s. So I bought it in 94 with the intent of doing someday a bar, a restaurant, something. And it sat for a long time. We had a lot of things in there. I had a partner that we used to teach scuba diving out of there. Kind of weird for Wilton.
Where would you go? To the river? To local lakes?
We would go to like sand pits down in Muscatine for training dives. There was a old quarry in Cedar County we used to use. We were the recovery team. If somebody was looking for an old, for a stolen car or something, they would call, and we were part of the deal for using it was we would have to go look, do a dive. But we used the quarry up in Cedar County for training. And then there's a couple dive lakes, one in just above Rockford, and another one up in Baraboo, Wisconsin, that we would go to. They were kind of fun to do.
I didn't know you were a diving instructor. That's kind of neat.
I made it to assistant instructor because you had to give up about 6 or 8 weeks of your life. I don't remember now, but to go to school to be an actual instructor, because it's a fun sport. If you like swimming, diving is the ultimate. But it's also can be dangerous if you don't know what you're doing.
Sure.
You have to know what you're doing to be a diver. And so it took a lot of training to get your instructor certificate. So I got my assistant, but my buddy that was in with me, he had an instructor's license.
So you buy the building with the intent of someday opening up a bar, a restaurant, something. But in the meantime, we put that on pause because we got to maybe make a little bit of money out of this place here. And so you're doing some diving instruction out of there.
Did diving instructions. Okay. And then my partner ended up with some heart issues and was on meds, and you can't do much diving with meds, or certain meds anyway. So we kind of gave it up, and it just sat there for quite a few years. We had a couple little things that like a secondhand shop and stuff like that. Nothing ever really worked out, so it just sat. And one day, my grandson probably was maybe 15 years old, and we were sitting down there, and I said, Mason, it's time to start building a restaurant. And I gave him a big hammer, and he started beating things apart. He helped me tear it because it had a lot of walls and things. And,
sure.
And with what we did to redo it, we tore a lot of the old stuff out. And he just took at it, and him and I did a lot of the heavy work, cutting some walls out. We had to put some headers in to make it, strong. And
so when you started doing the construction or the demo, did you discover anything within the walls where you're like, holy smokes, we got to try to maintain this? Was there any little surprises along the way, or did you kind of already know what you were getting into with that place?
I always hoped, I'd find this big box of old gold coins,
sure,
or silver dollars or something, but we never really found much. We found some old wood on it that had writing from the old hardware stores and stuff. But other than that, there really wasn't too much. Not a lot we're saving. But what we did want to do was maintain some of the old brick. So the east and west walls have a lot of the original brick showing.
Because when they built these buildings, they just kind of built one piece at a time, right? So each wall, even though it all downtown, it looks like one big building. It's not. As they were building it, it was like, well, let's slap another one, attach it to this one, and so you've got a lot of really detailed old school brick in there that adds to the aesthetic when you go into the place.
It's one of the things people will actually say, I just love the brick. You know, I like the way you kept the brick.
Yeah.
And that's interesting. You know, I was in construction for a while with Dad when I first got out of school. And then I had my own small business for a while in the early 80s. But we actually had it pretty easy. You know, you could buy scaffolding, you could rent these high lift machines. We had skill saws and power drills and eventually all the battery operated stuff. And you look at what these guys did, because that building was built in 1879, or that's when it was finished, was 1879. The walls are about 14-inch thick brick. It's 40 foot. It's about 40 foot tall in the front. In fact, when the building was built, it was the tallest building in Iowa. And
really?
Yeah, it was actually the tallest building in Iowa.
And right now, as you look at it, it's at its original height.
Yeah.
Minus maybe an inch or two, maybe sunk in. But I mean, that's wild to look at it now because it doesn't seem big at all. But at the time.
Yeah, at the time, it was a huge building. And you look at what they did to put this thing together, and you're just like, how did they do it? You know, they didn't have steel scaffolding that was safe like what we have nowadays. Everything had to be built by hand. They didn't have power drills. They didn't have skill saws. You know, they didn't have routers to make all the nice trim work and stuff like this.
Isn't it wild? Like truly, when people say they don't build them like they used to. One, it's an engineering marvel how they were able to build that building with the crude tools that they had back then. But it's kind of funny. Like sometimes you'll go to look at an old house to maybe purchase, and you're like, oh gosh, this thing was built back in the early 1900s, and it's like, well, yeah, but it's still built better than the houses they're building right now today, right? Yeah. And I suppose that's the same thing with these commercial properties.
I mean, the building's 30 foot wide, and it's clear span. I mean, there's a part.
What does that mean? I don't know what that means.
There's no support walls in between that 30 foot to hold up the second story. That it's got, and it's only for 40 foot tall. It's only 2 stories. The bottom is, I believe, 14 foot to the ceilings, and then there's quite. I actually could go put a 3rd floor in another set of apartments. Not going to happen. But,
at least not this week. You're busy this week.
Not next week either. Busy next week too. But there's a lot of room in there, and there are 4 apartments upstairs, 3 in the main building, and there's a garage out back, a 30 by 30 attached garage that there's an apartment over.
Does the noise from the bar disrupt the tenants, or it's just so tight that the sound doesn't really travel that much? Will you lift your mic up just a little bit, Fred, just so I want to make sure everybody can hear you? Because, anyway, thank you. Okay. But, does the noise from the bar disrupt the tenants? Or is that kind of baked into the cake where they know, hey, you're moving into an apartment above a bar here? So
it does not seem to.
Okay.
I mean, we have music down there once in a while, and we'll get into that here.
Yeah,
a little bit. But we have music, and nobody seems to ever mind. The main tenant right above us, they actually make more noise than we do sometimes.
Oh, well, then it works.
People, they're looking up at the ceiling like, hey, what's going on up there? And I'm like, oh, don't worry, that's just the tenant.
Yeah, they have a band today.
They've got a band. But it doesn't seem to. Nobody has complained. But now I always keep my rent. My rent's always been lower than everybody else's. It seems like people say what they're getting for rent, and I'm like, I should raise mine, but I never do. And and I'm full right now, so there's no apartments available. But I've had the same people in there, very rarely are they in and out in a year.
Yeah.
I've got one guy that's probably been there 10 years, another guy that's been there 10 years. I've got, the girl up front, she's been there 3 or 4 years now. There's a couple over the garage who've been there a couple, 2 or 3 years. People just stay. I try to keep them nice, keep the rent down, and it keeps them full. Which
it matters. Yeah, you're not going to have if you're a good landlord, you're not going to have a lot of turnaround.
Yeah,
you're just not.
And I enjoy that because I've gotten older and I just really don't like working on them anymore.
Yeah.
So
okay, let's fast forward to right now here today, because I could get caught in the weeds all morning about the history of the Axe and Oak, and in the interest of moving this thing along, but we'll have to come back to that another time. You have a big event tonight, and I will say that I feel like you guys have done a really good job of bringing a lot of people from the community together in your business. And tonight is a big party night. It's a big gathering night. It's the night before Thanksgiving. I would argue that's probably one of the biggest social gathering party nights of the year. So what do you got planned?
Well, and they do tell us that, Wednesday before Thanksgiving is the biggest night because kids are coming home from college. Everybody wants to get out because tomorrow places are closed and it's kind of a family day, and we're not open on Thanksgiving at all. We just, I want the people to enjoy their families. But tonight we have a group called the Smalls. And I think they just came up with this name.
This is the band you have coming in.
This is the band coming in. It's the Smalls. It's Ted Maroff, Deb Maroff, Billy Vanetta, Joel Smyers. If I take my phone out, I've got all the names. But
so all local musicians.
All local musicians. We
form their own super group.
Yeah. We used to do something we called the Man Barn parties. Ted Maroff started it, Ted and Deb. And it was just a big sing-along. And we'd have 30 people, 40 people upstairs in his carriage house.
That would be Ted's big barn behind his house. And I've been up there, up in that loft, and it's a really cool hang.
It is, and it is really a man barn. And it was just so much fun having those. Then COVID hit, and we didn't do it for a year or two, and now we haven't done it again since COVID. And Ted and I were talking, and I says, hey, Ted, how about we do a man barn party Wednesday before Thanksgiving? And Ted looked into it, and he says, yeah, the guys will do it. And so we just decided to bring it in, and like I say, it's kind of going to be a man barn party.
Oh, that'll be great. I've really grown fond of Ted over the years. I've gotten to know him through doing some things with the alumni banquet and other things, and I like his creative spirit too. He's an artist, in many different ways, and he's a fun dude to hang out with. So I'm interested to hear him play tonight.
Yeah, well, and you've been part of the alumni. You were the host a couple times.
Yeah. Yep. They're asking me to do it again this year, and we're in negotiations right now. We'll put it that way. And it's not a money thing, of course. I mean, I want to do it for the community, but it's I have kind of a vision of what I'd like it to be, and but.
And I'll say that about Ted, since he's come back, he's done a lot for the community.
Oh my gosh!
Him and the Ochiltrees, when they moved back, both keeping the candy kitchen going. I think that was a really great thing. Brings people to town. Ted, kind of took the reins of the alumni association, and we've turned it into where I don't know how many people used to go, because I didn't used to go to the alumni banquets. And then now all of a sudden, we get 200-300 people at the banquets every year.
Yep, it's a big hit. I think a lot of, especially the younger people, they will hear alumni banquet and they'll just think of a bingo hall.
Yeah.
And just a bunch of like really old people sitting around reminiscing about the good old days, and it really isn't like that. It's a great time. It's a fun night out. In this area here, you're kind of limited on options and different things you can do, but that alumni banquet, it's a very well-run program, and kudos to Ted and all the people involved for.
Well, and it's turned into something really good, because now we are doing, what did we do? 11 or 12 $2,000 scholarships.
Oh yeah, you guys are giving out a lot of dough.
We give out as much as we can every year. I'm part of the Leland Smith Foundation. I'm on that board, and we kick in some money to it every year.
For the people watching, what is the Leland Smith Foundation?
Well,
in a nutshell,
Leland was a fairly wealthy farmer, and he set up a foundation when he passed. He had one set up, and then when he passed away, my uncle helped run it. And then as he got older, he asked if I would like to be part of it. And it's just, we give away about $140,000 to $160,000 a year to local projects. We've helped redo the cemetery down here in Wilton. We've helped redo a lot of older cemeteries, resetting stones and things like that. Basically, what we do is in the Muscatine School District, the Bennett School District, the Tipton School District, Durant School District is where we work to send money to do different things, school projects.
So it's not just isolated to Wilton. It's Wilton and the surrounding areas.
Right, Wilton, Durant, Tipton, and Bennett.
I think to the average person, you don't realize how vital some of these foundations are. There were a couple people that were very important to this community that passed away and left a lot of money to be used to do good in and around the community, and that foundation's a great one.
Yeah, we're not as big as a lot. The Townsend Foundation is awesome.
Yeah,
and they do a ton for Wilton, and like you say, there's surrounding areas. We do what we can with what we've got. We try to grow it as much as we can. We don't look for donations. We don't do that at all. But, part of our responsibility is to work with the investors to try and make sure that foundation, we can pass our roles on to younger people, and that they can keep the foundation going for many, many years, and helping out with things like that.
Speaking of important figures from this community, vital figures, we lost one this year. We lost your dad, Kenny Grunder.
Yeah, that was.
How young was he when he passed?
He was 96 years young.
Amazing.
Had somebody was talking to me, right, I don't know whether the day of the funeral or something, but we were talking. He says, well, you had your dad around for 96 years. And I says, nah, I had him around for 70. He was around for 96. I only had the pleasure of being around him for 70.
Right.
And he was.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. He was an important figure in this community. He did a lot. He had a 50-year certificate from the fire department, the volunteer fire department. I was part of that for a little while until I moved away for a bit. He was on the school board when we built the new gymnasium up at the high school. He served on the hospital board down in Muscatine. He was Boy Scout leader for years and years and years. He just did so many things. And that's one of the reasons there is an Axe and Oak, is he would come down and sit and watch while I worked on it. He would just sit in there, and he would say, Fred, what the hell are you doing?
Well, he would know he's no stranger to swinging a hammer.
Yeah, he says, you got no idea what you're even going to do with this place. He says, and he's looking around, he says, you are sinking a ton of money into this thing, and you're not even sure what you're going to do with it. And I finally did tell him one day, but really the reason I did it the way I did it is I wanted him to know that I did learn something from him. You know, I could do these things that he had always hoped his kids could do. I think probably one of the worst things I ever did to my dad and mom, and it wasn't that it was a terrible thing, but I for some reason I wanted to be a fireman, and I had a chance to be a fireman out in California.
Okay.
And I got on a hiring list out in Modesto, and I moved out there for a while. And when I left, it just, you know, there was tears in his eyes that I was going, and I knew that I had hurt him in a way by doing that instead of staying and being part of the business, because I had been part of the business before I had decided to go out west. And that never worked out. Of course, when I came back, part of the deal was that once you left, because I had two brothers involved, once you left, you were kind of out.
Meaning of the family construction business?
Construction, not out of the family,
right?
But just out of the business. And I started my own business, and he always kind of secretly helped me, not financially so much, but he would make sure if I needed materials that I could get them. And once in a while he'd call me and say, hey, so-and-so wants a little job done. We don't have time. Why don't you go talk to him? And he'd do things like that for me. And I just wanted him to know, I wanted him to look at something and say, you know, hey, that's pretty nice. And he did. We were up there the night before he died. And he was I can't say good shape, but he was very lucid the night before he passed away. And I was in the bedroom with him, and we were talking, and he just looked at me and he says, I really, really hope your restaurant works.
How nice. And
then he says, you know, he says, I think I'm done. I've had enough. And I knew I was never going to see him again.
Oh, you just, when you know, you know.
Yeah. And that it was a tough couple days, and it's grown a little better. And as time goes on, you kind of get used to it. But I miss him a lot. He was my voice of reason. You know, for those of you who really know me, I'm somewhat political, and he would just look at me, and I'd be talking about, I'm going to put an article in the paper. I'm writing a letter to the editor or something like that.
Yeah.
And he'd say, Fred, you own a restaurant. You just have to keep your mouth shut. You know. And so he was kind of my voice of reason. So
I can relate to that.
Yeah,
I can relate to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've tried to tone it down a bit on that aspect, and we don't really talk about things like that down at the restaurant. And I don't know.
You try not to, because everybody likes to go out and have a good time.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes a restaurant or a bar is a nice escape.
Yeah, and it's sad that people can't just have differences and talk about it, whether it's religion or politics or whatever it is, sports. You know, people get so mad at everything nowadays. You know, and that's sad.
It'd be nice just to be able to get out the ping pong paddles and just hit the ball back and forth and just have those conversations, because I feel like that's how you learn. You know, I have some people that work for me that we just have different opinions on politics and just life in general. And I tend to like those conversations more than any of them, because they come from a place of curiosity and, you know, wanting to learn and get that other person's perspective. And it gets tough sometimes. People get really defensive in a hurry.
It does. But the problem is, if people would talk, most of us would find out there's not that big a difference in how we think about things. I ran into a guy at Founders Day when we were sitting and talking, because we had a stand up and he was next to us, and he said, well, I'm on the other side. And we started talking. We had a nice long conversation, like I wish everybody could. And when it was all done, it's like, you know, we're not that far apart, are we? And I said, no, we're not.
Yeah.
You know, so I wish things could go to that more. But,
yeah,
you know, we'll see.
Well, speaking of when, I really enjoy hearing about your dad. I'm curious because we're going into the holiday season.
Yes.
Tell me a Christmas story from your childhood.
Oh, God.
Like, what was Christmas like at the Grunder house when you guys were boys? Did you guys get spoiled? Did you get, like...
Mom and Dad, people would always say, hey, you're one of the Grunders, like immediately you've got a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
it's more so, hey, your parents own a business, so therefore you must be rich.
Yes.
And it's like, well, there's a day here and there where we feel like it, and then there's other days where it's like, well, no, back to reality. We got to get up tomorrow and grind.
Mom and Dad had one job in this world, and that was to take care of their family. So Christmases were always good. We had nice big dinners. There were always gifts for everything, and that was always fun because Mom was one of those. Let's see, I spent $1.85 on Fred, $1.75 on Steve, so I'm going to tape a dime to Steve's present.
Oh, wow. Would you boys keep track? Did you guys have, you knew?
We just knew Mom did that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
which was fine, but she's, it was never, you could never, because she was afraid somebody would know that one got more than the other. And there was never that problem, but it was always kind of funny, the way that she did things. But Dad just always made sure there was good food, and we always had gifts. It was never a lump of coal in the stocking, and
even though you might have deserved it every once in a while.
Well, yeah. If you went by the naughty and nice thing, I'm pretty sure my stockings would have been pretty empty. Or at least not a very good grade of coal.
Yeah.
Number 2 or number 3.
Do you remember a gift specifically at any point in time during your childhood that you got a certain thing and you're like, oh man, that made my Christmas?
Well, back in the day before RC cars and stuff like that, one year we got an HO race set, just a little oval, or maybe it might have been a figure 8.
So this was this the one where you could put the car on, it would go by itself in the thing?
There was little slots in the track, and then a couple runners that you had a controller, and you could.
The more you squeezed it, the faster it would go.
Faster it would go, and that was kind of one of the neat things because we turned it into a. We took up a big share of the basement in our house, and we built this huge racetrack with a train set running through it, and we would have like 24-hour races, have friends over, and they'd bring their cars, and we'd sit there and race, just continuously. Fun. So that was probably one of the neater gifts that we got.
And your mom is still around?
Mom is still, she's up at the assisted living here up in Wilton. She is still around. She's 98. So hopefully she'll be around for quite a while. I go up there when I can. I don't go up enough. I should go up more.
Well, you could be there 24/7, and you'd probably feel like you're not there enough.
Probably would. And sometimes I feel like I'm letting Dad down. I should be up there more. But we do, every once in a while I'll take her food from the restaurant because she's not real fond of the nursing home food.
Yeah.
And I've seen it, and I'm on that board too. I'm on the board of the Simpson setup in Wilton and West Liberty.
It's a nice facility.
It is. But I can't say I'm real proud of the food, but then I think about it, and you've got so many dietary problems with different people, and you're trying to make something good for everybody, and it's all got to be served pretty much at the same time, and so I can understand the issues with trying to do stuff like that,
One more thing about your dad, because he was such a prominent figure here in town. I mean, he mattered to a lot of people.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this last night. When you're a little bit older and you lose a parent in their late 90s, right? I think the initial reaction of the public is, well, he had a great long life, good for him. And it's almost a sense of like, well, how can we be sad here because Kenny lived to be almost 100? But I get the sense from you, like, he could have lived to be 200 years old and you'd still be just as sad that you lost your dad.
It doesn't matter. Oh, my friend at work, one of my friends at work, his dad died when he was a young kid, and he still misses his dad. My dad was 96, so I had him around my whole life, and I miss him as much as my buddy misses his dad, who never really got to spend a lot of time with him. There's almost times that you look at it, and I don't mean for this to sound, bad, but it's like, if I hadn't had him around as long, I wouldn't have known him as good, and I maybe wouldn't miss him as much. I don't know. And I don't mean that in a bad way, and I certainly am glad he was around. I'm blessed that I had that voice of reason all of my life, or, most of it. It's not easy. It's not easy. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Doug and Lenore, you guys have been through it. It just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
When it's somebody you love and somebody you've had around your whole life or their whole life, it's just it's not easy. I lost a brother in I believe 1970 was the year George died. And I know Mom and Dad missed him and hurt over that, up until the day he died.
Yeah.
How many ever years later that is, 50, 54, 55 years later.
Yeah.
It just didn't change for them.
Do you feel like when you lost a sibling, it was almost like a call to action for you to get your act together and be like, hey, you know what? I can do a little bit better. I need to step up a little bit more. Or did you just, were you grieving and it just happened?
It happened. I mean, that's so long ago. I believe I would have been 14 years old when George passed. And obviously, it makes you sad, and you lost your brother and everything. But I guess you just don't.
At 14, that's a lot to process.
Yeah, I look at it a lot different now than I know I looked at it back when I was 14 years old. Back then, it was, well, I lost my brother, But what did that really mean? And now I look at it, and George is buried right next to where mom and dad are, or dad is now, mom will be. So when I go out there, and you look at it, just, sorry, George.
Yeah.
And he went through quite a bit, when he passed. So that was not, it wasn't an easy time for anybody. But I mean, you go through it, and you figure out that you got to keep going, It's obviously no fun.
Yeah.
But
I feel like it's good to talk about people that you've lost, especially the ones that you miss the most and you love the most. It almost does justice to them, and telling their story, and the more you can say their name and talk about them in public, and it almost puts people at ease too. It's like, hey, it's okay to talk about George. It's okay to talk about Kenny. I want to talk about him, right?
Well, and I think you're right. I mean, my mom's mom and dad. In fact, I was named for my grandpa, Fred Wirtz. They were special to us because they lived next door to us, and they would take care of us a lot and always took, like Steve and I, my older brother, on little trips in the summertime. And I learned how to cook from Grandma Wirtz. Learned how to hunt from Grandpa Wirtz and Grandpa Grunder. I've even got God, I've got a shotgun that my grandpa bought probably back in 1920. A semi-automatic Remington that I don't shoot anymore. Everything's a little more powerful nowadays, and I broke a firing pin once, had a heck of a time getting one made, so I don't use it anymore. But you look back at all those kind of things as you were growing up, and you just you miss it. We'd go fishing all the time.
Yeah.
Those the times you spent with Grandma and Grandpa or Mom and Dad, because Mom and Dad were busy, didn't always have time to do things,
Yeah.
with us. Although I will say that, Mom was very involved when we were Cub Scouts and stuff. And, of course, she always enjoyed us coming home from school and saying, oh, by the way, I have to bring cupcakes tomorrow. How many? Oh, 4 dozen. And all kids do that, or at least I get the impression that they do. And Dad, he always had time to go out and shoot a basket with us or throw a baseball or whatever the case may be.
Isn't it interesting that it's those little things that you end up remembering, that you go back to. It's not the item. It's, you talk about gifts that you got, and maybe you can think of 1 or 2, but you can think of 100 little memories and little things of doing something that really matter.
And the other nice thing is it's like there are no bad memories anymore. I mean, I know there were times that Dad and I didn't get along, but it's hard to think about them. It's not hard because it hurts, hard because I just don't really remember.
They dissipate.
They kind of go away, and all you have are good memories. Yeah. And that's really nice. That is. I enjoy that. Now I think about things that Dad and I did, and
well, and you talking about your grandparents, and you're a grandparent now.
Yeah.
Right? And you remember things about your grandparents. And I suspect that's what every grandparent's wish is to just be remembered by their grandkids. They'll certainly be remembered by their kids, but by their grandkids, that means you're doing something right.
Yeah. Well, mine's going to be driving around in his memory, so.
Yeah. Well, you got to get a motor put in the thing first.
Well, that's true. That's true. And there's 2 of them there. There's a nice Camaro sitting in his garage, too.
So what's next for Fred, right? Axe and Oak is up and running. You have, you've got staff. There is some shared ownership in there, which I think is pretty cool. You were able to open it up for people to buy in, to be able to have a little skin in the game. And with that sense of ownership comes some pride in the place, but also I'm sure that's an interesting dynamic.
Well,
how does that work?
Well, actually, when I did it,
to boil it down for everybody, when shortly after you got opened up, correct me if I'm wrong, you opened it up for people to invest in the Axe and Oak and have some stock in the joint, right?
Well, and the truth is I had to. I got the building done. I got the interior done. I had the bar up and running, and I just ran out of money. I mean, I have
passion projects will do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
And talking to some of my friends like Doc and the Ochiltrees and that, and everybody wanted to get the kitchen side going, so we had a restaurant. So a bunch of people came forward, and I hadn't really advertised, and I would have people come up to me and, hey, can I get in on this? And we did, and it works out really, really well. Doc spends a lot of time down there, which is great. He helps me, and he's a great asset for the place. I have Ron and Laura Clerk-DeRoos are part of it, and they spend a lot of time there. Laura is one of our main servers. And the others kind of in the background a little bit more. Lynn and Brenda have got involved a little bit in the fact that now we're doing ice cream, and it's specialty ice cream made by the Candy Kitchen.
That's great.
For us only. And, But in general, nobody, for the lack of a better, nobody bugs me. I run the place. I'll get input a little bit. What do you think about this or that? If there's a major expenditure, you know, I go before everybody and say, hey, we need this, that, or the next thing. But for the most part, nobody really steps in and says, you know, I need you to start doing this. I need you to start doing that. This is how I want the restaurant to be. Everybody is just pretty much backed away and let me do my thing. Not sure that's good or not, but
it's working so far.
It's working so far. And I still work full time out at HWH. I don't know how much longer that's going to last. If he'll let me go down to a part-time, I'll probably stay there for a while yet. But eventually I need to get away from that because I want to spend more time doing things for the restaurant. I want to bring some more things in. Right now, you know, people ask, what kind of food do you serve? And I say, well, it's not bar food, but in reality, it's tenderloins and burgers and things like that, and our Taco Tuesdays. And we have brought on a ribeye steak sandwich on Saturdays. So we're trying to get a little bit more active into more of a restaurant type thing instead of bar food. I look at it's really good bar food, but it's still things that you might see at a bar and a grill rather than an Applebee's or that type of place. And I really want to get into the barbecue stuff. I love smoking meats. I want to start bringing brisket on and more things like that. So.
Yeah, and I suppose once your schedule frees up a little bit, once you do finally get the HWH gold watch and the retirement cake, right? The gold rolly from HWH.
Yeah, I'm not going to hold my breath on that.
So, what's on your bucket list?
Bucket list?
Yeah. What do you still got to knock off here? Outside of the restaurant.
Well, outside of the restaurant, I have through work. I used to stay. I've been in every state in the mainland United States. Now I'm not.
Have you really?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I haven't been in every city except for Washington D.C.
Was that intentional? Like you wanted to pin every state?
No,
or did that just happen?
It just happened the way we do business. I traveled for them. There was a point in time where I was probably on the road. 26, 27 weeks a year.
That's interesting, though. How few people can say they've been to at least the 48 Continental?
Not a lot.
I bet there's not, especially here in Wilton. Yeah. I bet you could probably count it on one hand.
Might be able to count on one finger. I don't know.
Maybe you're the only guy.
I don't know, but it's been interesting. Like I say, I've seen and met so many different people, but that does leave Alaska and Hawaii. I have no real desire for Hawaii. Maybe when I was younger, Hawaii would have been fun. At this time, the only reason I'd go to Hawaii is to see the memorials, the Arizona Memorial and stuff. That would be about the only reason to go. Maybe do a scuba dive trip. They've got a really neat thing over in Hawaii, undersea volcano that people dive in that would be kind of fun. But that's about it. But I really want to go to Alaska and do a salmon fishing trip.
Yeah, that would be exciting. If you're going to fish for salmon, I suppose that's where you need to go.
Yeah, well, we do it out. That's one of the nice things is I've done a lot of fishing all over the United States. And whenever I go to Portland, I've got a guide I hire, and we go out salmon fishing, which is fun. Every once in a while, I'll actually catch one.
Well, I hope you get to catch one in Alaska.
Yeah, I do hope someday I get to make that trip. But my bucket list is short because I've done pretty much everything that it's a full life. Build houses. I used to build racing engines in my younger days. I worked at a shop in the Quad Cities, and I was a cylinder head specialist. And I did cylinder heads a cylinder head for a Porsche that won the 24 Hours of Daytona.
Did you really?
Yes. He came in and complained, I can't beat Corvettes. And my boss, Ronnie, and he did the short blocks and stuff, and I did the cylinder head, and he he come back. I didn't know right away, but they
What
told
is
me
that like? You get put in charge of a project that you have a driver that says, I can't get the car to do what I need it to do to be able to win. And then it's handed to you, and then they win. What's that like? What's that feel like?
That was really one of the high points that, hey, look what I did here. Something that really good. Now, I can't take the credit that I was in charge. Ronnie Williams was in charge of it. I was working for him. But, he turned the cylinder head over to me and says, hey, this is what we ought to do with this. And he kind of turned it over to me, and I turned it into my project, and we got it done. And he did the other half of it, and the guy put it in, and I didn't know right away that he had won for years. One day Ronnie's son said, you know that motor you built for, yeah? He says, they won the 24 Hours of Daytona. And I'm like, really?
You're like, that would have been nice to know.
That would have been nice to know, back when I did it. It still was kind of special. But
you made me think of an interesting thing here. There is a lot to be said about doing something with your brain and your hands and creating something or fixing something, regardless of how big or small it is. That internal sense of accomplishment, whether it be rebuilding a cylinder head to win the Daytona 24-hour race, or even just building a birdhouse. There's this feeling of, I did that can't really be replicated by doing other things in life.
Well, and that's kind of my whole life has been, and it started in the Cub Scouts. We built birdhouses, and things like that. And the birdhouses went to working for Dad and building buildings and houses and finish work. Dad was a carpenter. Nowadays we go to Menards and buy a bunch of cabinets and screw them in place.
Yeah, and call yourself a handyman.
Yeah, you're a handyman. You're a carpenter. No, you're not. Dad was a carpenter. Dad built cabinets. I mean, he had a shaping tool where we would make our own cabinet doors. If you go down to the Catholic Church, there's a cabinet up where the organ is up at the front, and it's got really nice raised panel doors in it. And Dad and I made the doors for that.
I'll have to check that out.
It's pretty cool. I really loved building the new Catholic Church.
Yeah, that's right. You guys were a huge part of that.
Yeah, Joe did a lot of the flooring, or all the flooring, and I helped with that. And Dad and I built the music cabinet and the cross up front. Dad and I built that, and then Steve and Gina Holiday finished it. So when you go into the church and you see the cross up front with the corpus on it, that was Dad and I built the cross that's up
Wow.
there. And that's a strange story, because when we had the cross done, we had the corpus, the body had been refinished, and we had to mount that to the cross. And the way it was bolted to the cross, but also there were wood pegs to go through the feet and the hands. I had to pound them in place because the holes were a little tight.
That had to have been wild.
You talk about a weird feeling, to be sitting there and pounding nails into Jesus' hands and his feet. It was just it really was one of the weirdest feelings I've ever had. In fact, I sat and I'm apologizing. I'm sorry.
Because you're a man of faith. That had to have been quite an experience.
I didn't really do this, 2,000 years ago, and I wouldn't have. I'm sorry I have to do it today, but that was a weird experience for me.
I mean, but what an amazing thing to be able to go into that church, look at that cross at the front of the church, and go, Dad and I, we built that.
Yeah. I mean, and it was a community project. Everybody, you had the Gavins did a lot of the electrical. There was all sorts of things that many people in the church did. Like say Steve and Gina Holiday did quite a bit. And I know there were others, so I don't mean to leave anybody out. But it was a community project to get that church built.
I don't think a lot of people realize that when you drive by that church, And we're talking about St. Mary's.
St. Mary's.
Yeah. When you drive by that church, if you don't know any better, it's just a church that somebody had built, right? You don't realize that was built mostly by Wilton residents with their hands and their tools and their knowledge. That doesn't happen a lot these days.
There was a lot of it that was done. And like the hall that's attached to the back of the church and the annex building, those Dad built that. Dad and Grandpa built the hall, and then Steve and Joe and Dad and I built the annex building that used to be behind the original church. And there's a lot of things from the original church still in there. But like I say, there was, it was a community project. It wasn't, obviously just us. There was everybody pitched in and did whatever they could, to get that thing going, because we really wanted our church back. We had been out without a church for 20 years. I think it was 20 years, something like that.
Yeah, I know it was a long run.
Yeah, and I was always one. You can tell by what I took and did downtown with the Axe and Oak building. When they tore the old school down, that just broke my heart. There was so many things that could have been done with that.
Yeah.
It was in bad shape. Yeah, whatever. I'm in bad shape. Don't tear me apart because I'm in bad shape.
It's interesting that you say that, because I kind of had that sense too. I know nothing about buildings or structural integrity and asbestos and so on and so forth, but I just felt like this is a giant brick building. Can't this be turned into apartments or something?
There certainly should have been something that could have been done with it. And there's a lot of people that are glad it's gone. So I'm not trying to raise any.
Right. You're not
it's
saying
over, it's gone.
Good
so
or bad,
it's
but
not good or bad. But
yeah.
I'm a person. I don't like tearing old stuff down. Now the same thing with our original St. Mary's. It would have cost a pretty penny to remodel it back then. But you have something that's been there now, and we're proud of the church we have, and it's great. And even Dad, who was. They've been part of that church forever. He was very upset when it was tore down, and he fought against it being tore down. And there was a lot of hard feelings. But even he, in the last few years has said, I'm glad we did it this way. We've got a church. It's a better church than what we had. And he's right. I mean, it's not like I'm still mad we tore the school down.
Right.
We did. I look back and I say, God, it's a part of history that I wish we still had. And we have some of it. I mean, Jake took some of the, that piece off the front. They've got that up at the new school. So there's things that are still around from the old school. But I just hate tearing old buildings down unless they get to the point where they're falling down and not anything you can do. But
I'll tell you, when they took that school down, Dad and I really enjoyed being able to have those benches built. Those 12 benches out of the old bleachers out of the gym.
Yep,
that was a fun thing for us to do. I always get a kick out of seeing the one down at the Candy Kitchen. I think the Candy Kitchen has, because we only made a dozen and we had them placarded.
Yeah.
And I think the Candy Kitchen has 1 of 12, and down at the station is 12 of 12. And then the other 10 we sold, and that was a fun little project.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, Fred, I'll give you a little confession. I still have some pieces of lumber left, some long pieces from that. So if you can think of anything you might want to do with them.
I don't know. We'll have to sit down and think about it sometime.
Yeah. But we're hoarding a few pieces, but I don't think we're going to build a birdhouse, but I think it would be kind of neat to get those into something else. Well, you have a busy night ahead of you here. You got a long day. I think the place is going to be packed tonight down at the Axe. What time should people get there if they want to, you ain't going to find a seat anywhere, but what time is this thing kicking off?
Well, we've had some people call and reserve tables. We've got adding the annex, that other, on the west side, that gives us a lot more seating Of course, you wouldn't be in the room with the band, but you'll be able to hear it. I would say they're going to start playing at 7. I just don't know. If you want a table and keep it, we open the doors at 5, so
You better be outside waiting.
you might want to be there at 5 and get yourself a table. I do have to do some plugs while we're here.
Please do.
Last year, we used the Iowa-Nebraska game to raise money for the Shop with the Cop thing they do here in town. This year, we're doing it tonight. And the Smalls, we're going to have a pot or a basket or something up on the stage where you can do donations. And all of the donations, they've agreed all the donations will go to Shop with the Cop, and then we will match it. Whatever's in the bucket, Axe and Oak will match.
Whoa.
So I'd like to see $200 or $300 in that bucket.
Well, you might have more than that. So hopefully there's a lot of drinks and food being purchased tonight. Hopefully tonight can at least be a push for you by the end of the night.
And I don't care. Sometimes you do things for the community. I want to put a little plug in for Artie's. Chili's a friend of mine, and Artie's is doing something on Thursday for Shop with the Cop, so please support that.
And for the people who don't know, Shop with a Cop is the Wilton Police Department will go and shop with less fortunate kids from the Wilton school.
Give them nice Christmas.
Give them nice Christmas presents and things like that. So certainly you can't have too much funding when it comes to something like that.
No. So the more that happens, the better. If we don't make any money tonight, we don't make any money tonight. I'm happy to help kids. I had a really good life. My folks provided for us. We never had any problems like that financially, at least that the kids knew about. And we always had a good place to live. We always had plenty to eat. We always had gifts and anything we pretty much needed. And there are a lot less fortunate than us out there. And whenever you can do something to help, I think that's a good thing. So,
well, Fred, I'm looking forward to seeing you again tonight down at your place. Thanks for coming down here to my place this morning and hanging out.
And I am going to do one more plug.
Oh, plug away.
New Year's Eve is coming up. That one's for me and the Axe.
Okay.
We have Monica Austin. For those people who knows who she is, she's just a huge draw. She's a very good entertainer. We have her from 8 to midnight at the Axe and Oak.
This will be New Year's Eve.
This is New Year's Eve. We haven't decided exactly on the menu. It'll be order off the menu, and I think there's going to maybe be brisket and roast pork dinners available that night. And we are taking reservations. We're taking reservations for tables in the main area. So
you can do that now.
Yeah, you can do that now.
You better do it now. You better do it now.
Yeah, come down to the Axe and Oak. Watch our Facebook. If you see a post, I'm gonna get some information on there about how to get a hold of me, so we can start taking and we've already reserved. I think we have 10 or 11 tables available of different sizes, groups of 4, groups of 6, and we've already got 2 done out of the 12 have been reserved, and we haven't even really advertised.
My guess is by the end of the night they're going to be reserved.
I hope so.
Yeah, you maybe by noon today they might be.
Because that'll help us pay for the Shop with the Cop thing tonight. So, but yeah.
Do you want to promote your TikTok page or anything like that? Or
I don't do TikTok. We are on Facebook. I go on there. I try to do once a day or every couple days, and just to promote our specials and what have you that we do. I'm really appreciative to all the people that frequent our place. We get a lot of compliments. We don't always do the service is sometimes a little slow. Our places, our seating maybe is bigger than what I built the kitchen for. So sometimes it can be a little slow, and we apologize for that. But I don't look at it as a place. It's not a fast food place.
No, you're there to hang out for the evening.
You're there to come in, have a drink, have a Coke, whatever your tastes go towards, and sit and enjoy, talk to your friends, and you will get food. And as far as I know, everybody seems to like the food. So,
well,
we are just appreciative of the people that come in. And in fact, I'm going to throw a thing out for the whole town. Stay in town. You know, we've got
coming from a guy who was here, left, came back.
Yeah, we have Artie's, we have the Mill, we have Quickies Tacos. You know, at one point everybody's, boy, I'm glad you're building a place because there's no place to go. Well, now we've got all sorts of places. We got
there's
the cafe,
options.
we've got the
Mill. Yeah, you got them all.
So frequent these places, and we'll stay around. You know, you can get good food, good drinks, reasonable price. You don't have to go to Muscatine. You don't have to go to Monticello, Iowa, to get a good tenderloin. One of our sheriff tells us it's the best tenderloin he's ever had.
He would know.
So
you know those guys travel around,
and the sheriff's not going to lie. So he'll probably send me a bill for that. But anyway,
Fred, thank you. And not just for coming in, but thank you for what you're doing and everything that you're pouring into this community. You're doing it because you love the town. And you love the town that you grew up in, and you now call, you've always called home. And I don't live in Wilton, but I consider Wilton home. I do. I have a house somewhere else, but I consider Wilton my home. And you are one of those people that make this town the way it is, and it's a wonderful community, and it continues to get better. I can't wait to see what this town looks like in 5 years. I think the downtown is going to look completely different in such a tremendous way. So, and you're leading the charge with that. So, thank you for.
Well, I don't know if I'm leading. I'm part of the troops, but there's a lot of people that want this town to succeed and become something. And there was. You go back 10, 15 years, and it was kind of, there really wasn't much going on in Wilton, and I think the town's coming back. I think there's a lot of good here. Like I say, we've got a lot of good restaurants, a lot of good food. So it's a destination. We're becoming a destination point.
Well, come back. I feel like we got a lot more to talk about someday, and I feel like we only scratched the surface. But thank you, Fred. Happy Thanksgiving if I don't get a chance to tell you that tonight before I take off. But we'll be down there. The Braymeyer clan's going to come knocking on the door and hanging out for a little while, and I can't wait to see all the other wonderful people in this community and get a chance to chat with everybody. So.
Okay, well, everybody's welcome, and this has been. I've had a good time today.
I have too. So, I've learned a lot. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting me to join you.
Fred Grunder, Axe and Oak, thank you, everybody. And make sure to tune right back in at 8:30 as we go live with 3 of the football captains on the senior team that went to state this year. So have a fresh cup of coffee, get yourself some breakfast, and we'll see you here in just a little bit. Thank you, Fred.
And happy Thanksgiving to everybody. Be safe.